Let's bring on our two speakers and we'll get them seated. I'll introduce them and then we'll get underway. So would you please welcome Lawrence Krauss and Peter Rowlands. Welcome. Now you probably know lots about them already, so let me just give you a brief introduction. Lawrence M. Krauss is a renowned cosmologist and science populariser. He's a foundation professor in the School of Earth and Space Exploration and director of the Origins Project at Arizona State University. His most recent bestseller is A Universe from Nothing, and it's been translated already into over 20 languages, and he's part of a film which is being shown tomorrow morning, The New Believers, or Unbelievers. The Unbelievers. The old Unbelievers, the Unbelievers. Peter Rowlands, who joins us, is a leading figure of the radical Christianity movement and author of books such as How Not to Speak of God and Insurrection. A philosopher, a theologian, believer and doubter, he has developed a number of contemplative practices to help Christians accept doubt and complexity, such as atheism for Lent, which he might talk a bit about later. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask Peter in a moment to come to the lectern. He'll speak for up to 15 minutes. Then Lawrence will respond from the chair. Then we'll open it up to a conversation. So please welcome Peter Rowlands.
Hi, thanks very much. It's an honour to be here. I was hoping this would be like a battle of the titans, but both Lawrence and I are a little bit vertically challenged, so it's a war of the hobbits.
Heightism already in the
Yes. Just to say from the start, I'm not here to try and win a debate with Lawrence or score easy points, and I'm not here to try and build a fortress from which to lob flaming rocks at new atheism. I'm not here to try to set up a new tradition, and I'm certainly not here as an apologist for some sort of outdated religious worldview. I'm here because I bleed. Because we all do. I'm here because I'm a haunted house, and we're all haunted houses. We're all full of ghosts. The people that we've loved and lost, the people that we've hurt, and the people who have hurt us. It's like the perennial philosopher said, Winnie the Pooh. In his introduction, we read, "Here is Winnie the Pooh coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is as far as he knows the only way of coming downstairs, but sometimes he wonders if perhaps there's a better way, if only he could stop bumping long enough to think of it." And you have that beautiful image of Winnie the Pooh bouncing his head down this staircase. And when I read that and when I read it, I feel that that's all of our experience in life. We're all bouncing our head through this cosmic staircase, wondering if we can make it through a little bit less painfully. And so what has this got to do with the debate between new atheism and what's being called new religion? Well, I want to kind of bring out three critiques of new atheism. I think new atheism is better than that which it attacks. But I want to argue that it is caught up in the same problems and antagonisms as religion. And it often is used to create a new tribal identity, a new way of feeling a sense of mastery over and against the other. And in its antithesis to fundamentalism, it shadows it. So point number one, I want to say that new atheism is a type of shadow of the fundamentalism it rejects. Now, what I mean by that is new atheism concentrates on the what of belief. What do you believe? And it attacks that. It treats religious belief as a problem. It treats fundamentalism as a problem. But what I want to say is that fundamentalism isn't a problem. Fundamentalism is the solution to a problem. Think of it like alcoholism. Alcoholism isn't a problem. It's the solution to a problem. And unless you deal with the problem, you won't get rid of the solution. Even if I'm able to change you, if you're an alcoholic, and I'm able to get you off alcohol through sheer force of will, you'll pick up something else. We all know alcoholics who are chain smokers or obsessively into fitness or have bursts of aggression. In other words, a new symptom will come up to replace the old symptom. Unless you deal with the reason why the symptom is there, you can't get over it. Anger at asylum seekers, that's not a problem. That's the solution to a problem within the society. Unless you can understand the projection that's going on, you'll never be able to deal with the aggression and the fear and the xenophobia. In Northern Ireland, where I'm from, you see this with paramilitaries. Sometimes a kind of terrorist will become a Christian. And the fundamentalism they adopt looks pretty much the same as the terrorism. This has the same texture, it has the same tone, it has the same tenor, because it's really accomplishing the same thing. It's acting as a guise, a mask to protect from seeing your own internal antagonisms, your own ghosts. Now, the response of New Atheism to this, of course, is, hold on a second, New Atheism isn't a positive set of beliefs. It's the negation of a set of beliefs. You know, it's like saying baldness is a hairstyle, or it's like saying that health is a disease. It's a negation. But anyone knows, especially physicists, that nothing can be something. Nothing can have a type of positive charge. If you have an eating disorder, it's not eating nothing, you're eating nothingness itself. The philosopher Jacques Derrida used to tell a story about a rabbi going into the synagogue, and he would bow and say, I am dust and I am nothing. And then this priest came in and bowed down and said, I am dust and I am nothing. And then this imam did the same. And finally, this old guy comes in, the caretaker who's looking after the building, and he says, I am dust, I am nothing. And the three religious leaders look at him and they look at each other and say, who the hell does he think he is saying he's nothing, right? That's how nothingness becomes something. We can protect ourselves. Even I know someone who has very low self-esteem, and the way they protect themselves from that low self-esteem is through self-deprecation. In Northern Ireland, we're really good at self-deprecation. That's what we do. I use it all the time in talks, although I'm not very good at it. So I would attack him and go, well, you're always late. And he would say, yeah, I'm a really rubbish person. You go, stop saying that. You're protecting yourself from feeling me being annoyed at you by being annoyed at yourself, right? The own self-deprecation mechanism operates as a positivity. Hence, I would say you see in New Atheism a sense in which it feels a little bit like the religion it rejects, creating new tribal identities. Second of all, I want to argue that New Atheism legitimizes and strengthens the fundamentalism that it attacks. For example, if you've just had an argument with your mother, and I come up to you and I say, you're a real idiot there. Like, look how you treated her. You shouldn't have done that. You're going to suddenly get your heckles up. And you're going to say, no, I was in the right. You've never lived with this woman. She's a nightmare, right? And you'll justify what you did. Even if you think you did something wrong, you will, because it's a defense mechanism, defense mechanisms operate to protect you from attack. It's like the blob or the evil force in The Fifth Element. They're firing missiles at it. And as the missiles hit it, it actually feeds it and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Or Freddy Krueger, the more you attack him, the worse it gets. The best way to attack Freddy Krueger, if he ever shows up, is to ignore him. I think that's the trick, just letting you know. That's the trick. So if you attack a religious fundamentalist, that just gets the defense mechanism operating at a hyper rate. And even, as I say, if you do beat them, they will then take on the alternative position in functioning in the same way at the level of the what of belief. And by the way, it also legitimates them just to argue. And whenever Lawrence debates William Lane Craig, who do you think is the one going around talking about it all the time? It isn't Lawrence, it's William Lane Craig, because the very fact that someone took him seriously enough to debate is like, look, somebody took me seriously enough to do it. Imagine after this debate, Lawrence and I, we have a few drinks at the hotel room, and he invites me up to do some crazy sexual fantasy, act it out, right? No, I'm not inviting you unless you're interested, because otherwise it's just an example, right? But we're in the room and we're doing something crazy, and he's got the duck outfit on, and it's all going great. And then someone walks in, and we're shocked. We look up and we're surprised. We're not so much surprised because this disbeliever is looking at what we're doing. We're surprised because the gaze of the disbeliever breaks our suspension of disbelief. We realize how stupid we look. What I want to argue is a lot of fundamentalism, it already knows it's not right. If you hear a preacher say, if you pray and you have enough faith, your child will be healed. We all know what that means. We means, yeah, unless it's really serious and you call an ambulance, right? That's the underlying unbelief that sustains the belief. That's my problem with unbelief, by the way, is that it actually sustains belief. You have your belief, but you don't really believe it, which allows it to continue to function. It's actually harder whenever someone doesn't call the ambulance, prays for their kid, and their kid dies. That's more of a problem for fundamentalism because it exposes its own kind of lie that's going on under the surface, So what I want to argue is, in the same way that New Atheism shadows the religion it critiques, New religion, as it's being called here, doesn't operate at the level of what you believe. It operates at the level of how you believe what you believe. How do your beliefs function? And in the same way, instead of directly attacking religious fundamentalism, it uses parables and stories and the resources of religion itself to break it open, to not take it seriously. It's the outside gaze to the sexual fantasy that we're playing out. It's the one that goes, I don't know if that's really what's happening. Let's go a little bit deeper. Because if I, instead of saying to you, you shouldn't have treated your mother like that, if I take you out for a drink, we sit down, we have a pint, we have a laugh, and then I say to you, you know, what was that argument about? That was a bit ferocious. You're more likely to go, yeah, I know, I probably acted a bit bad. And you're more likely to change. And finally, I want to say that New Atheism doesn't have the resources needed to decenter us in the way that it often claims it does. No worldview can decenter you. What we need is a space to share and rituals and liturgies and music. If you've just broken up with someone, or if I've just broken up with someone, and I go to my friend, look how she treated me. She slept with somebody else. She really treated me badly. She did X, Y, and Z. And my friend said, no, that's not the truth. Come on. You know, like there were lots of problems and issues in the relationship. And I could quite rightly turn around and say, hold on a second. I already know that. But let me get all of this out so that I can come to know what I already know. I know that I mistreated her. I know that I wasn't there. I know that I was always traveling around and I was never in the place where she needed me to be. But I have to say all this stuff so that if I ever meet her in the street, I'll be able to go up to her. I'll be able to shake her hand and say, you know, I miss you and care about you and I wish things had been different. But you know, I think about you and I hope you're doing okay. What we need as human beings is not a worldview that will help us look at the ghosts in our lives and help us be more human. We need the spaces that invite us to see that within any worldview, despite whatever worldview you have, whether you're an atheist or a theist or agnostic. It's the how of belief that's functioning underneath. Kierkegaard once said, what is a poet? A poet is someone who screams and cries in agony, but whose lips are so formed that when they cry out, beautiful music is formed. And so when we say to the poet, sing to us again, we are saying, may new disasters befall you, right? Now, if you've gone through some deep suffering, you can go out and get drunk, right? And you can go and see a pop band, but the next day the suffering comes back. Or you can go and have a pint and listen to a singer-songwriter sing about their brokenness in a way that helps you glimpse your own, in a way that helps you work through your own, so that you might do the work of mourning. What I'm arguing is that that's what the new religion attempts to do. It attempts to create structures that help us encounter our brokenness and our unknowing. It helps us enter into that space where we're not afraid of the other, not projecting out on the other. It sees fundamentalisms of various sorts, not as the solution or the problem, but the solution to a problem. And it tries to get underneath those things. I'll finish with this. People think it's courageous to talk about what they believe and to fight for what they believe and to die for what they believe, but that's the cowardly thing. Think of Batman. You know, Batman dresses up on Saturday, thinks he's a tough guy, you know, goes and beats up some criminals, right? And then goes back to Wayne Industries, makes billions of dollars, right? He doesn't care about the people he's beating up. Those guys, like criminals, what use is that going to have for Gotham City? Beating up a few criminals who are just trying to put bread on their table, trying to get their kids to go to school. If Batman really cared, he wouldn't spend billions of dollars on high-tech military spec. He would start after-schools children's programs. He would healthcare. He would like job training schemes in Gotham City, much more effective. The Joker might not want money, but the people who work for the Joker do. But Batman doesn't care. Batman's courage is actually fear. Fear of what? Well, fear of looking at the death of his parents. Fear of actually dealing with that stuff and working it through. So he's out there beating up criminals because he's too afraid to look at his own brokenness. The courage is to look in whatever worldview you have and not create a new system to think that we're right, but to rather circumvent every confessional system, to put it perhaps, as the philosopher John Caputo says, a philosopher into every metaphysical system. to deconstruct new atheism, to deconstruct religion, to create a space where we can encounter each other in our brokenness. And people say, this sounds very depressing. No, I'm not trying to make you depressed, honestly. I'm telling you, you already are depressed, you just don't know it. And the way to overcome that depression is to look at the ghosts, bring them to the surface, do some exorcisms. That's what new religion is. That's what new religion does.
You have to weave in at least one duck costume into your presentation.
Yeah, I've got it already at the hotel.
Yeah.
Okay, I asked Peter to speak first so I might have some basis of understanding what new religion is. But anyway, so let's see. Let's start with new atheism, because that I know is an appropriate term. I don't understand what new atheism is. It's the same good old-fashioned atheism that's always been there, which is not a belief system, and not something that cares about what people believe. It's how they think, and in particular, atheists don't spend their time attacking beliefs. They just say that they will choose to accept things on the basis of evidence, and not doing so is foolish. And they don't. And certainly people like me, who are apparently called new atheists, don't spend their time. I don't label myself as an atheist or a new atheist or an old atheist. I don't label myself at all. I don't label myself an a leprechaunist, an a Santa Clausist. I don't label myself by the things that are too silly to worry about. One of which, in general, is religion. In fact, what amazed me, and we had a little discussion, a little email discussion, so because Peter was trying to teach me some things. No, in a good way. Is that what I don't understand is why you want to replace a religion that doesn't work for one that's based on angst. It doesn't seem to me that it's any different. It's the same old-fashioned religion, namely believing things in spite of facts. You talked about, I mean, the whole point is that, of course, a lot of the things you said are quite reasonable. We should try and get to the bottom of things and think about why we thinking about things and trying to understand others. But that's kind of, in my mind, what science is all about, or rational thinking. And why you have to call it religion. We're just get rid of it and say, let's be rational. Let's be sensitive, let's be thoughtful, let's be considerate, and let's be reasonable people. And we'll base that on the evidence of reality, and we'll try and understand experience, not by trying to experience things from some vague, primal sin or whatever, or angst or depression, but from the world the way it really is. And understand that the world doesn't care about us, that we create our own meaning. All of those things, which are really the thrust of science, is a reasonable way to act. And to call it new religion just seems to me to be saying, well, I need some hook. I need something. And you began by saying, I believe. You didn't tell me what you believed. I don't believe. I don't believe anything. I look at stuff and say, well, is that likely or unlikely based on evidence? I can test the hypothesis. I can choose if I want to walk out the 10th floor of a building in a window and see if I'll fall, or I can, I've tried it out beforehand and assume I'm gonna fall, so I won't do that. I can base my actions, and that's really the point, that this vague philosophical premise that you did talk about is irrelevant. The real problem is not that. The real problem is that many people who call themselves religious use that religion as a basis for actions which are silly, because they're based on non-facts. They're based on something that isn't true. So they're against gay marriage because being gay is a sin. It's not a sin, or unnatural. It's not unnatural. But that kind of that kind of basis, it governs the actions of the world. And if you're concerned about making the world a better place, which is really the reason I get involved in some of this public stuff, and I think science can make the world a better place by getting people to force their beliefs to conform to the evidence of reality rather than the other way around. There are real problems, and religion is a source of real problems. And sure, let's get rid of those real problems. Let's get rid of that nonsense. But why does one have to create a whole new fabrication to do it? Just say, let's deal with reality. Let's call new religion reality. Actually, you know what? Let's call it science. And then we agree. Except, and in fact, before I know I'm begging a question because some people are going to say, "What isn't science your religion?" No, it isn't. Because religion is something that, in some sense, is based on firm beliefs that don't change, and that's not what science is all about. Science is based on beliefs, if you wish, that change. That's what's great about science. We change our minds because we learn. That doesn't happen in religion. And it's vitally important that we be willing to change our minds. And so when we talk about the problems, let's focus on what the problems are. Let's not say we need some crutch. Now, it is true that religion, in its form, as it's usually practiced, provides some crutch, provides some sense of community. One can't deny that. That's why it persists so long. It provides people something they need. But let's look at what the things they need and try and address those needs in a rational way that makes the world a better place and get rid of the idea that there has to be a belief system based on that. Instead, we just deal with the world around us and, in fact, use that not as a loss. Not to say that God is dead is a loss. It's not a loss, it's a gain. Of course, it's not dead because it never existed. But saying you get rid of God is somehow, we talk about the loss of faith. That itself is a sentence which is incorrect, just as incorrect as the sentence new atheism, or the phrase new atheism. Loss of faith is not a loss of anything, it's a gain. And by saying that somehow you lose God and therefore you've lost something intrinsic that we all need, it's just nonsense. It is for some people because it's ingrained. Unfortunately, we ingrain it in children. We do that child abuse of teaching them religion when they're young. And before they have a time, before they're able to talk about Jacques Derrida or whoever, these are deep concepts, but we take 3-year-olds and label them and tell them what they are, and then it gets ingrained, particularly probably if you grow up in Northern Ireland, but or anywhere. It gets ingrained in any of us who've had religious training because as children, most of us have. And overcome that and just realize that we don't need to label children. We don't need to feel that we've lost anything by understanding the world for the way it is. Understanding the world for the way it is fills you with awe, wonder, excitement, appreciation. Spirituality, that I've said before, is much better than the spirituality of religion because it's real. And that real spirituality is something we should all celebrate. So let's just celebrate and not take all this stuff too seriously. That's the other thing about religion, that when we say we attack fundamentalists and we strengthen them, well, I've debated a lot whether I should talk to that crackpot, William Lane Craig. And the point is, I don't care about William Lane Craig. I don't care about the fundamentalists. The fundamentalists, you can't change their minds. What you do when you talk to them is you take the vast middle, the rational people, and try and show them the fallacies of one thing, or at least try and get them to think about questions. So the reason to engage those people is not to change their minds, because you're not going to do it. Is to, if anything, if there is any reason, it's to affect the people who are listening who may not have thought about the issue, and to provoke them to think about questions. And that's all really I ever want to do, is get people to ask questions, which is really, and not provide answers, but ask questions and get people to think about the real world and try and come up with the answers together. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say. Okay.
I pose just a question or so to each of you, but as I'm doing it, you might be wanting to make your way to where the microphones are so that you're in position if you've got a question to pose to our panel. So I'll start with you, Lawrence. There were three critiques that I took from what Peter said about your approach, and accepting you don't label yourself as anything, but that you are perceived to be part of a movement, if you like, of critique of religion, which I think would be demonstrably true. His three criticisms were that the movement of which you are a part looks and feels like a religion. Secondly, that its strong attacks on fundamentalism and religion generally just reinforce their position. And the third point, that it lacks the resources to decenter us, which I'm not quite sure what that meant, but I'll ask about that later. I want to talk about the first, which you've touched on slightly when you said there's a guy that you will debate to expose the middle. But does it worry you that people are perceiving the critical response to religion as being religious in its character? Is it just or does it just wash across you?
If that's if that bothered me, I'd be bothered by a lot of other stuff a lot more. The critiques that I get there are a lot more vicious. Look, people like to label things, and people call. I spend a lot of time with Richard Dawkins, and I'm much more sympathetic with him now than I used to be. I used to argue with him a lot more, till I wrote The Universe from Nothing, in fact. So in The Universe from Nothing, I asked the question, can you create a universe without God? That's all I did, ask the question. I then labeled a strident, atheist fundamentalist. Okay? So all you have to do is ask questions about religion, and suddenly you're labeled. So people label this movement as a movement, and it's but it's the same when I get labeled as a scientist pejoratively by many people. I'm told I practice scientism, and it's a movement, and scientists are no different than religious people. I get those kind of letters all the way. What's the difference? You just believe in the God of science. Well, that's nice for people to say, but it's just nonsense. It's not a movement in the sense of religion. There's no authorities. There's no belief system. It's not a belief system where people have to reinforce each other every week because it's so ridiculous that they have to go to church to remind themselves about it. And it's anyway. So to be labeled as such is just what people want to do because they feel insecure about it. And I think the violent response that happens is insecurity. Whenever people attack you for asking a question, there's usually a reason, and it's insecurity. And I think what one's hitting on, and when one talks about the effectiveness or the non-effectiveness of confronting religion, the point is it's very effective to ridicule it. Ridicule is a vitally important tool. We ridicule sex, we ridicule politics, and religion is at least as silly as either of those, if not more. And so what we can try and do is just treat it like everything else. And that itself is such a shocking thing that the minute you say, hey, let me ask a question, let me make fun, people get so shocked that what we have to do is raise people's consciousness to realize there's nothing wrong with doing that. And it takes a while, and people will respond and attack you for it, but after a while, people realize it is ridiculous.
Peter, before I come to you with a specific question arising from what Lawrence said about religion, do you want to respond to that? Because it strikes me that there's a very strong riposte to your claim there that what Lawrence is engaged in, or Dawkins or others, is in any sense like religion, because fundamentally it's about just simply asking questions, and it's provisional in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to address that by saying that even a negation can be positive, even kind of like not eating nothing can become something. And so I totally agree with you in that. But I think that anything can become a tradition. And new atheism, especially in America, you do meet, if somebody adopts this new position, but their old position was a way of avoiding a confrontation with their own anxieties or problems with family or problems at home, the new atheism itself becomes a protection mechanism. Now, I'm not arguing for the what of belief. That's why you didn't hear what I believed, because I'm not interested in what people believe. I'm interested in how they believe what they believe, how the belief functions. So I can go along with, most of what you say, but my main interest is that still I think you're treating fundamentalism as a problem. when I keep saying I think it's a solution to a problem.
Women that get stoned for being raped, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, if that's not a problem, what is?
Yes, but you've got to understand, like, so for example, take the asylum seekers. I hear in Australia, this is a big thing. You treat it as a problem to solve. You know, you'll always be fighting it. But if you try and find out where it's coming from, like say fundamentalism in the Middle East, if you connect it with US foreign policy or something, you're not directly attacking it. You're realizing that it's fueled by something else.
But that sounds a lot like science going to the root of things itself.
But it's a scientific approach. I mean, I've written about it. I do think the way to attack fundamentalism is to educate women in these countries, because that's the best thing you can do to improve not only the experience of family, but women will generally educate their children if they're educated, but also the economies, which is also a huge. Fundamentalism stems from, in many cases, from poor economies, from people who are disadvantaged and look at the wealth of the Western world and resent it. You're right. But those are scientific approaches. Those are saying, what's the evidence? How can we address the problem? But I will say, look, the one thing that I would agree with is people do atheism. For some people, or at least that term, does provide comfort for some people in the same sense as religion, because it provides them some identity. I've been at meetings with that are humanism or atheism, whatever they're called, and these are groups of people who come from small towns where they can't even tell their family or their neighbors that what they're thinking, and they find a group of people who are like-minded where they can say what they really think. And it's liberating and wonderful, and that sense of community is a good thing. So yes, if it provides that sense of community, that's great. And if that sense of community replaces religion or a similar religion, that's fine. But all you're saying is that anything that provides people with a sense of solace and community is like religion. Fine, but it's better than religion.
For me, there's two ways to set up a community. One is through scapegoating. So you set up your community by a mutual hatred of somebody else. So for the fascists, is the figure of the Jew or something like that. And the idea is they're stopping us from having a solid, harmonious community. But in fact, actual fact, it's having the shared enemy that creates the context.
But you go to these meetings, there's no shared enemy. It's people celebrating free thinking.
But there's another,
finish
the second one is like AA, where AA doesn't scapegoat anyone. AA says, like, my name is Peter Rollins, I'm an alcoholic. So you bring in the brokenness. So I'm going, whatever humanist group, Christian group, whatever it is, you'll either find solidity by scapegoating, and I think sometimes New atheism scapegoats religion, or it can be more like an AA meeting. And of course you still have a set of beliefs, but you're saying, but you know what? When we think they're the problem, actually that's a projection of certain insecurities within us.
I want to get to the audience, but one question for you. Lawrence, I think, made a very clear distinction from his approach is rooted in asking questions and acting according to what evidence provides. In other words, the facts matter as far as we can ascertain them. The implication being that what you call new religion or religion in general has no regard to these facts and that they don't matter.
Yeah.
Is that a fair criticism, or do you say, well, this pointless asking about facts in any case?
Well, I mean, the main concern I have when Lawrence says that is, for me, he's taking the idea that we believe what we say. We believe what we say we believe. And I'm saying that we don't. Most of the time, like, if someone says in an argument, I want you to leave, most of us know that often means I want you to fight to stay, but you can't say that, because if you say that, the person can stay. So you have to say, I want you to leave, and then if the person leaves...
What about something like, this is a glass of water?
Yeah, absolutely. In scientific kind of claim, you can say glass of water, but I'm talking about metaphysical beliefs like religion. So that's kind of the topic or whatever.
So what you're taking, though, is but you're just taking a scientific approach. You're saying evolutionary psychology tells us that people couch what they say in a certain set of terms, but we have to work deeper to try and understand that. But that's a scientific approach. I don't understand that.
No, but because I'm saying that you keep attacking the surface level, but if you understand that actually most fundamentalists don't actually believe what they're saying. We say God will take care of everything, but they still put a steeple on top of the church. They still lock the door at night. That actually the most radical thing is to understand that it's not trying to convince the facts you're factually wrong. It's realizing the person already knows it. You have to create a context where they can admit that what they already... Like WikiLeaks, Slavoj Žižek uses that example. The most radical knowledge in WikiLeaks isn't the stuff we didn't know. That's all boring, what one politician thought about another. It's the stuff that we knew, but we didn't want to know that we knew. Black hole prisons, murder of innocents, all of that. Black, it's the stuff that we know, but we don't want to know. If I say, I think your wife's having an affair, and you kick me out and get really angry, I'm like, oh, so you already know. But if you're confused, like, oh, I didn't know. In other words, what I'm saying is, a lot of the aggression you see in fundamentalism, pushing out the other, is not the fear of the other, it's the fear that the other exposes your own otherness to yourself, i.e. the other expose. So, like, if when I meet someone, the genuine multicultural experience is, they're monstrous and weird, they're bizarre. But if I really look at myself through their eyes, I realize I'm weird and monstrous and bizarre. My views on marriage, my views on relationships. And what I'm saying is, I already know that my views culturally and politically and religiously are probably bizarre, but I protect myself from that insight.
Okay, well, let's
one last
comment, and we'll open it up to Scott.
And then we'll get to the audience, probably more interested. I'm just trying to think how to frame this. So, first of all, it's not just fundamentalists who don't believe most of it's everyone who calls themselves Christian or whatever. They don't buy most of the garbage, and they pick and choose. They want to be good people, and for them, being Christians, good people, so they pick the things in the Bible they like. They throw out the stuff they don't like. They call that their religion. But what we're trying to do is to set up a framework for saying, don't be afraid of being wrong. That's the whole purpose of learning and knowledge. Don't be afraid of being wrong. Don't be afraid. In fact, question your beliefs. That's what science teaches us. That's what we want to encourage other people to do, is question your beliefs and ask yourself, why do you believe what you believe? And is there a basis for it? If there isn't, give it up, throw it out like yesterday's newspaper, and get on with life. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, we'll probably get a chance for you to come back to some of the questions and things like that. I love this Islamic saying, the old one, trust in God, but tie the camel's leg. Yes?
Peter, how is what you're talking about any different to, I'll start again. Peter, how is what you're talking about any different to pop psychology or philosophy? I mean, if I'm feeling down, why wouldn't I just open Spinoza or go to my doctor?
Yeah, I mean, my work is very influenced by existentialism and by psychoanalysis. But the funny thing is, both psychoanalysis and existentialism are very firm, came out of the religious tradition in many respects. Kierkegaard, obviously, his work is based on reading of, it's about Regina, really, but, Abraham and Isaac, and Nietzsche, profoundly religious, and the psychoanalytic tradition is very Jewish. So in some respects, those are the resources that I use. That I think faith is not a mode of belief; it's a way of participating in the world. So, for example, if you believe the world is meaningless and it's all going to end in a cold death or whatever, entropy, but you experience love, you cannot help but experience the world as meaningful. And vice versa, if you believe the world's meaningful and it's all going to be roses and heaven and harps, but you don't love, you cannot help but experience the world as meaningless. For me, faith is that it's anti-wisdom not because it's against nihilism. It's a lived protest against nihilism. It's a way of living as if the world is worth dying for.
And it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you live that way. Is that the point?
But this idea, what you said is just wrong. The world is the universe is meaningless to me, but I'm in awe of it.
Yeah.
And those things can happen together. In fact, they go together for me. And so one doesn't have to love the universe to be in awe of it, and one doesn't have to think it's meaningful to be in awe of it. In fact, the fact that it's meaningless, I find much more fascinating than if it was created by someone, some Saddam Hussein in the sky.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say that you have to love the universe. I would say that you have to experience love, i.e. when you lose someone you love, you don't just lose one object that you love, like I love my car, I love my house, I love physics, and I love my wife. When you lose the person that you love, you lose your ability to love all the other things. I mean, they're the object cause of our desire. Our jobs become meaningless, our work becomes meaningless. And what I'm arguing is, in love, things become beautiful. There's no inherent beauty to physics.
But the loss of love, I mean,
There's
if
no
I
inherent
lost
beauty to it.
the person I love the most in the world happens to be here right now, if I lost her, I would be, every day I would think about how precious that love was. Yeah. And it wouldn't mean I'd love people less. I would suspect I would be more considerate and more caring of others for understanding the pain and that I'd experienced myself.
Okay, what I'm going to do is take a couple of people, so I get a bit of a grab bag of comments so we get through a few more. And so we'll go first of all to this microphone. If you could just give your name, please, and then say it, and then I'll come to you over there. Yep.
Sure. My name's Sean. I've got a question for Peter. What will happen to your memories when you die?
Okay. Question that don't answer yet. Hold that, and we're going to something from over
I don't
here.
know. That's it.
The answer is I forgot.
Oh, you don't know. Yeah.
My name is Anna. My question was about how, for Peter, how is your new religion connected to Christianity? I just don't quite get the tagline with, where is Jesus' resurrection? Like, what is your fundamental beliefs of new religion? What is it?
Does anybody else want to have one more here? Because I think you can handle three, since the first one you don't know.
I'm sure it's
Hi, my name's David. Question for Peter. Isn't saying that you're interested in how people believe rather than what they believe just a convenient way of putting your own beliefs beyond criticism?
Okay, so what happens to your memories when you die?
Okay,
which
don't
you
know,
don't
so
know.
that's it.
And then we've got the issue about where's Jesus and the traditional Christianity in your new Christianity, and are you just obscuring yourself from criticism by saying it's just about how but not what?
Brilliant. I know I have to be quick. Is that right? Yeah, you keep me right. Partly the next talk that I give this afternoon is an attempt to answer that question more fully, but I don't know if you're going to be at that one. I will say very quickly what I'm going to try and do is that what I argue is in the very beginning of the biblical text, you have the story, Adam and Eve and Garden of Eden. And they want this apple. Now, an apple's just a boring, it's not even an iPhone, it's not even anything interesting, it's a piece of fruit, right? But what makes a piece of fruit interesting? I argue it's the prohibition. You can't have it. Anybody who has kids knows that as soon as you say you can't have the transformer, it makes it magical. I really want the transformer, I really want the transformer. And what I argue is that is a deeply psychological experience for us, that we have this initial connection with our primary caregiver, and as we're weaned off that, we have this, it's a very painful experience for us. And I argue that we continue to live like that. So then we think money will make us happy, job will make us happy. If I go out with that person, I'll be happy. If I divorce that person, I'll be happy. We're always seeking the thing that will make us whole and complete. And I argue that there's this image in the biblical text that reframes that, where you have the Holy of Holies in the temple, this temple curtain, and then the court of Gentiles where we are. And the central moment of Christianity is the ripping of the curtain, where we realize there's no God, there's nothing behind the curtains. It's the Wizard of Oz moment. We realize there's nothing that will make us whole and complete. Existentially, I don't mean intellectually. Existentially, we experience that. But then it doesn't end there. We experience that there's a depth in being. And we can re-understand the term God, not as an object that we love, but rather as a mystery we participate in the act of love itself. That is a very truncated answer to the question. But for me, Christianity and religion is not about beliefs at all, partly because there's so many beliefs in the Bible. You've got 4 Gospels in one event. If someone says they've been abused and somebody had a trauma, and they, in court, say what happened, and they can give a very coherent argument for what they said to the police is the same as what they said to the judge, was the same as what they said to their parents. That points to not them telling the truth, that points to them lying. Whereas if someone has a traumatic event and the times and the dates don't quite fit, and what they said to the police is different from the judge and the parents, that's not evidence they're lying. That points towards them telling the truth. Because a trauma is an event that you...
So which are the Gospels on that thing? Are they not telling the truth or the trauma which mucks up the answer?
Well, I see the text as
Probably
so
both.
full of belief. You've got polytheism, henotheism, monotheism, you've got atheism, you've got everything, and these are clashing together. And so what I say is that one of the ways to protect you from believing something is to inundate you with beliefs that are all mutually contradictory. And then I've got a friend in Brisbane who believes everything. She believes in everything, but it's actually a means of protecting herself from believing in anything.
And just on the question about this being really a technique to obscure yourself, to hide yourself from criticism, can you briefly answer that?
Yeah, no, because this can be attacked. The great thing is I want to be very clear about my craziness and ambiguity. It definitely protects me maybe from saying what you believe, because I'm saying that's not the important thing. I have 10 different beliefs for breakfast. And by the way, my beliefs don't tell you who I am. My beliefs are designed to protect you from seeing who I am. and to protect me from who I am. I say I love animals, but I eat meat, and I know that meat comes from places, very dark places, like mistreating of animals. I say I love kids, but I know these clothes were made by kids in Indonesia. You know, my beliefs, if you want to know what I believe, don't listen to what I have to say. I have a vested interest in making myself look good, because I hang around with myself all the time. I mean, if I thought I was an idiot, this is why reality TV works, because nobody thinks they're an idiot, right? That's why you go online. So for me, beliefs don't tell me who I am. My beliefs are a protection mechanism, protecting me from encountering that. That's why in AA, the first thing you have to do is take the false narrative you tell yourself about yourself. I could give up drink anytime I want. I'm not an alcoholic, which happens. And then you have to make it fit with your material reality. That's very different. That's part of the spiritual disciplines for me, is taking our false narrative and making it fit. So I am interested in what we believe, but what we believe is found in our actions, not in the fantasies that we have in our heads.
Well, I think, let me just, I was going to read my Kindle, because I'm sure all the questions were for Peter, but I'll try. But let me try and jump in. So it is true, actions are what matter, and that's the problem. I mean, if we're interested in social policy, if we're interested in how to make the world a better place, we have to see how people act. And the problem is that people's actions are sometimes based on their beliefs. When those beliefs don't conform to the evidence of reality, those actions are wrong. If it's the new government of Australia not believing that there's human-induced climate change, they're going to make bad policies because they refuse to accept the empirical evidence. And so
refuse to accept.
Refuse to
As
accept.
in there's something else going on. They know the truth.
What they do is they deny the evidence of reality.
Deny.
And
sorry.
There's, what I was thinking, don't take this the wrong way, although you will.
I wouldn't have until you said that.
Yeah. No, it's obvious from it. But there's, I'm not, someone told me the other day, Einstein said scientists make bad philosophers, and to which I said, no loss. But anyway, but it does remind me. I actually was influenced by existentialism more than anything else. But mine is more of Sartre and Camus. But the best philosophical line which came to mind when you were talking is one from a TV show I used to watch called The Dick Van Dyke Show in the United States, and where the head of that said, one time he was looking and he was saying, what on the surface seems vague is in reality meaningless, and I get the sense that, at some point, to say that I'm not trying to get people to like me. I'm trying to get people to question me and question themselves. And that's what science does. And that as an ethical, if you want to call it, or as an act of living, can make the world a better place. That's it. There's nothing more fancy than that.
Okay, go back to the audience, and I will make an appeal that if you'd like to ask Lawrence a question and stop him retreating into his Kindle, that would be really great.
No, I'm enjoying hearing Peter. So wait.
So I think we're up to here. So here first, again, we'll take a cluster.
Hi, my name's Levi. So far the discussion has had lots of good rhetoric and things like that, but I think the underlying question is there something that religion or new religion can give that a secular, rational lifestyle can't? And if not, then why don't we just ditch it?
Excellent. I think it's for you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Edward. This question is for Lawrence, just to mix it up a little bit. I'm a non-believer myself. I don't like the word atheist, but I'm a non-believer myself. I'm a huge fan, and I follow the Four Horsemen, etc., etc. One thing that I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, that Peter is arguing is the utility of religion, or the placebo effect of religion. Explicitly, if not implicitly, he said that many times. Now, the question is, with that sort of utility also comes the feeling of community and the feeling of togetherness and oneness and having friends and peers, etc. How can we, if we get rid of religion, how can we replace that sort of feeling with atheism, I guess, for lack of a better word? Because I can't see any way of being able to do such a thing.
Okay, so we'll take those two. Maybe the last one is for you.
First? Okay,
yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's going to be hard for you to answer that one. I think.
That's easy. Easy.
That's easy, is it?
Anyway, okay, it's a good question. I've thought a lot about it, obviously. By the way, I'm not sure religion has a placebo effect. I mean, in fact, it's a claim that it does give people solace at some points. But in fact, actually, if you look at scientific studies, as you probably know, the there was a study of people being prayed for and in hospitals, and they did, on the whole, the people that knew they were being prayed for did worse. And the argument was quite reasonable, that they were more anxious, that they felt they better get better because people were praying for them. but in fact, so I'm not sure there's a placebo effect. But your key question, and I think it does relate to something Peter's talking about, is how can we create a sense of community, but a sense of community based in a real world instead of a sense of community based in this fairy tale? And one of the ways, I think, is sharing our common humanity, which science does. It tells us that we have these incredible connections. And celebrating that, I think we should have Sunday meetings about quantum mechanics every week, but actually I think better than that would be rock concerts. No, I'm serious. People tell me, well, religion provides this place for people to go and be happy and share and feel good with each other, but it's all around some fabrication. So we just have to think about other ways for people to share things, love of music, love of whatever. And we can build communities around a common humanity, which is really, to me, the best way of doing it. Instead of representing our differences and saying we'll meet because we're this sect and other people will meet over there because they're that sect. It doesn't, that just separates people.
And the difficult question with the easy answer?
Oh, yeah. Well, basically, for me, society today, we're acting in an ironic way. We all do question our governments. None of us believe that having more money will make us happy. None of us believe that having that better car will make us more attracted to the opposite sex. But we treat these as a fetish. A fetish is an object that we know is not magical, but we treat it as if it is. And so what we do is we go out and we materially enact this. So we go to a 70s disco, we dress in the 70s clothes, we dance in the 70s way, and we also take the piss out of it as well. So we actually mock the very activity that we're materially invested in. What I'm saying is, secular society, we can all click our thing on Facebook and say how sad we are about various things. And what we're doing is we're acting in a form of disavowal. Very quickly, a story from back in Ireland about a guy, Seamus, went to the bar every week, had 5 pints of Guinness. One week he comes in, has 4 pints of Guinness. Barman says, what's going on? Seamus says, well, I've got 3 brothers and a father. They're all over the place in the world. And I have a drink for each of them and a drink for myself every week.
Oh, I know that joke.
Oh, yeah. But he says, my father recently passed away, so now I have a pint for my 3 brothers and myself. Fair enough. So he comes back next week. He orders 3 pints. And the barman says, listen, I don't mean to pry, Seamus, but has something happened to one of your brothers? And Seamus says, oh, no. He says, doctor's orders, I've had to stop drinking, right? That is the ironic gesture where you mock the very behaviour you're engaged in. New religion does not try to change what you think. It tries to help you enact the breaking free of the frenetic activity for the pursuit of things that will make you whole and complete.
But I think the question that was posed is, in what sense is it religion then?
But you have to go to my next session. You have to, because that's my whole argument. It's going to say,
it would be good to just answer it.
My God, I'll answer it very quickly. My God, why have you forsaken me? Is not an intellectual atheism because it's addressed to God. It's an experience of the loss of God existentially. Why are you gone? What I'm arguing is that the heart of Christianity is the existential experience of the loss of whatever it is you think that will make you whole and complete.
But why do you call it Christianity?
Because my God, why have you forsaken me? It's definitely in there somewhere.
But I mean, you could. What's Christian about it?
It's only for me, Christianity is not a worldview. It's not a tradition. Christianity reflects a mode of life.
Why isn't Judaism?
I'm sure there's elements of it in everywhere.
Paganism.
Yeah, I'm sure there's elements everywhere. I'm just talking about within the Judeo-Christian tradition because I don't know other traditions. But I don't want to also say it is.
So I see. So the thing you don't believe in, that's the heart of your being, is Christianity. That's why you call it the new Christianity.
For me, Christianity is a radical negation. It is the experience of the loss of all identity.
So if you negated Islam, you'd be the new Islam.
I don't know, because I don't know Islam but good enough,
Okay,
Because the reason by the way, that's only, I think it might be there, but I just don't want to say, because there's probably something better there. I don't know, I'm just working within that tradition.
Right, now you're going to hear the full version of this later on as you've gathered. We'll take a couple more questions up here firstly.
My name is Nisar Ali, and my question is from Lawrence as well as from Peter about the basic school thought of, atheism and as well as religion. If you can explain that what is the basic school of thought? Like, this is the basic question of philosophy about idealism and as well as materialism. If you can explain that, what is the basic question of philosophy? Because I'm not satisfied with the explanation. So if you can explain the basic school of thought of atheism and as well as about the religion.
Okay.
And
Can we answer that right away?
question-
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that straight away.
Yeah, because you really hit an important point that's a misunderstanding, and it's really the way this is framed. Atheism isn't a school of thought. It's not. It's just saying it's not a school of thought. It's defining accepting evidence and not. It's just saying I won't choose to believe things for which that are untrue. Or which there's evidence that
It does
there's
sound
evidence against them. You can call that a philosophy. You can call that realism, rationalism. Those are schools of thought, and atheism is arguing in some sense, not all atheists, but they're saying, look, I won't call myself a Christian or this or that because I see no evidence for this or that. So it's not a belief system, and it's an umbrella thing for just saying I don't believe these things. But at the basis of it, you might call a school of thought rationalism or humanism. Those are sort of schools of thought. And those basically are that, what I just said, you accept the world for what it is, you try and look at evidence, act rationally upon it, and both on a personal level and a societal level, that'll make the world a better place.
People have probably noticed an uncanny similarity now, in that you're both saying it's not our beliefs, it's our way that we relate to the world.
Because I have as much of a
But you've
problem
given
with
more
new
precision
religion.
to what that
Yeah.
is. It's about the questioning and acting on evidence.
Oh,
Sorry,
Okay.
is it a separate question?
Yeah, there was another part of my question.
Well, I think I have to go to one other person. If there's time, I'll come back to you for your other bit, because,
Okay.
just to be fair, you've had one crack. Yep.
Yeah, hello, my name is Plamen. Actually, it's a very similar kind of question to the last one,
Might be
but
part two.
again to Lawrence. So just from what you were saying about your beliefs is you don't like to you don't like the way that religious people approach life because they're stuck to their religion. And you said something about there's not necessarily a meaning to life and that doesn't bother you. But what about your definition of anything higher than ourselves in the world? Is there a higher consciousness? Is there anything that what the American Indians would call the greatest spirit?
Well, look,
Okay, that will have to be the last question. So,
Is there like anything that
Well,
joins all
there's
of us
two
that we can-
misconceptions in what you said. Let me respond to what and as a politician, I'll answer the question I wanted to answer rather than one you asked. But no, I'll try and answer it. The first thing is you somehow argue that I don't like religious people or something like that, and that's a misunderstanding. I'm talking about ideas, not talking about people. So the question is, are ideas silly, not people? And we should all be able to ridicule silly ideas. And that's all I'm saying. Now, we all hold silly ideas. I hold silly ideas, certainly. I've discovered Peter does. So that doesn't make me better than anyone else. I should question my own silly ideas as much as anyone else's. In terms of higher, that whole notion that there's something higher suggests a hierarchy, which I don't see anywhere in nature. There are natural phenomena, and they're incredibly interesting over the scale of the largest size of the universe to the smallest size of the universe. And to say that something is more significant than something else is to apply some subjective criteria for which there's no evidence. So if you're asking me, is there something that governs me other than me? Well, it's probably the society in which I live and the biology in which I'm based and the chemistry that governs my biochemical process and the physics that says I can't fly out of this room, whereas several times during this that I wanted to, but that's it. Okay.
any last comments from you?
Just whether he's got the rubber duck outfit.
Pardon?
Just whether he's got the duck outfit.
Has he got the duck outfit? And do you not want to say anything about the notion of higher being or atheism, whether you think you see it as is it equivalent to what you're talking about, but just a different way?
No, I mean, at its core, what I'm saying is that actually, and here's a biblical bit, that Paul says there's neither Jew or Gentile, slave, free, male, female. I want to add neither Christian nor non-Christian, atheist nor theist, pacifist nor hawk, whatever. that there's a loss of identity, an embrace of our brokenness, a sense in which we can be instruments of each other's further transformation.
And do you
That's
see
it.
science in the way that Lawrence talked about it being
Yeah.
as equally a valid route to resolving what you describe as that condition?
Well, I think they're different now. I don't think it has this. I'm very pro-science, but I don't think it helps us encounter ourselves at that deep level.
Okay, well, look, ladies and gentlemen, as Peter's indicated, he'll be expanding upon his thoughts at another session, which is in an hour or so, is it?
Yeah.
So please, if you'd like to hear more of that, you're welcome to join.
Thanks, Peter.
But in the
Yeah,
meantime,
hard job.
both will be signing their books outside, and we thank them very much.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Very good job. Thanks very much.